All right, so this is the Kellenberger 600U, currently wired for 220 volts, three-phase. Behind you is the coolant system, and over here behind the workhead is the hydraulic system. Everything is labeled. Electrical wires are all got numbers that correspond with numbers in the cabinet, and the piping, the hydraulic connections are pretty self-evident. So I'm going to go ahead and start this up. First thing you want to do is make sure it's on. Then you have to start with this green button. What that's doing is it's starting a generator, a motor generator in the electrical cabinet that's going to generate DC current to run this workhead. This is a DC motor on here. And there's a DC drive mounted in the cabinet. So we're going to come over here next. This top button here represents the table, which would mean hydraulics. So we start our hydraulic pump, and the bottom one is our grinding spindle. You can select different modes for when this workhead comes on. This right here is a jog. So you see when I jog this, we get our head stop spinning. Now that's a set speed. When you're in the grinding, you can adjust the speed of the workhead with this potentiometer here. So you have a setting where you can always have it on in case you're doing some kind of setup or want to mark your part or indicate it or whatever you want to do. And now, yeah, you can turn this down to whatever you want. Or you have it completely off, or you have it in the setting number 2. Setting number 2 is going to come on when we start our cycle. Now, starting the cycle means that the wheel slide is moving in and out, the headstock is starting to work, and if I have the table turned on, it'll start to move. So you want to make sure that you're not going to hit anything. The table stops are tight. You have a mode selection switch up here. Right now I have it in manual. I can turn this hand wheel in by hand if I want. If I wanted to increment in at the table reversal, I select that mode. If I only wanted to feed on one side, I select that mode. It'll feed on that side, but not this side. That side, but not this side. Or we have it feeding on both sides. Table speed is controlled with this knob here. I can shut it off, or I can turn it up. If I want to do a plunge grind, then we have a continuous feed. The machine also has a spark out. After a certain amount of time, after it reaches 0, it will sit there until the time is up that you've adjusted over here. I can increase that time. I can slow this. So I increased it then. Just takes a little bit longer. There it goes. All right, so I'm going to put it back to. You also have this is your speed control here. This controls the amount of in-feed, or the speed of the in-feed. You can speed it up or slow it down. You can also, when you're doing longitudinal grinding with the table on, you have a dwell. I could set these two little knobs, the smaller two knobs up there. They allow it to sit there for a little bit before it reverses, to give the wheel a chance to take away the material and just give the machine a chance to catch up. Each little bit you increase that increases the amount of time that it'll stay there. So every time I break with this lever back and forth, you see that this wheel head goes back and the hand wheel backs up to the amount of stock removal, or however much you let it take off while we were doing that. This next knob here has 3 adjustments on top. It has, right now it says it's A, which is the automatic mode, but it also has a little screw here. You got to back it out so you can turn it, because they don't want it to get accidentally turned. It's a little stiff. All right. So now that you turn that to I for internal, when I turn this lever here, we're no longer bringing the slide in and out. The slide is actually already in. When I started moving this, it came in and stayed in. It stays in because it's in the internal grinding mode. When you swivel this head around and want to grind with your ID spindle, every grinder has a method of keeping you from backing out while you've got your quill inside your workpiece. It's a safety. So you have to put it in this mode when you're going to do ID grinding. Now, it's up to the operator to do it. On this particular model, there's no bells or whistles are going to go off. It will work if you have it in the normal mode, and if you are inside the quill at the end of your cycle and the spark out timer goes on, you'll have a crash. But when you're in this I mode, you will still, let's just shut this table off, go into the plunge mode. Where is it? You're still feeding, but when it gets to 0, the wheel head's not going to go back, but the amount that you fed off will. But that's only a tiny little bit inside your bore. So you're grinding now with your ID spindle. You get to the end, you could still have a spark out. You could still be doing reciprocating grinding, but this head is not going to go back. That's the whole importance of this part of the video. All right, so moving down the line, you've got some control knobs here. This is simply a clamp. If you ever wanted to clamp this in place so it absolutely doesn't move, that's what you can do with this. Over here is a fine feed dial. It actually moves your stop pin. You'll notice sometimes that this isn't going to be on 0 when it gets to the stop. Well, that's because as you adjust this fine feed dial here, right now I've got it set, it's exactly at 0. But if your part is a little bit too big, then you want to go a little bit beyond 0. So you make that movement over here, and we're only moving it, this revolution of this is about 50 millionths. This knob over here allows you, when you're in feeding, there's always a period of time when you start this, and when this starts to, I can stop it with this, or I can rapid it. So if I had this going slow, let's see, let me do that again. I have this going nice and slow. I want to get in, so I can rapid this. That's what you can do with that. I start to hit the part, I say, oh shit, oh, excuse me. I still have 2.5 thousandths to go. I can actually back this out and then measure my part, come back in and start my feed again. It's another nice feature. Over here, when you engage this, you have a coarse ratio, so you can move the slide in and out quicker. And you have the same with the table. You have a fine ratio and you have a coarse ratio. Over here, this is an emergency stop button. This is the speed for the work head. And over here is for the spark out. Now, if you didn't want to have that spark out at the end of your cycle, you could shut that spark out off. And the other 2 numbers on there have to do with a Marpost type or Movamatic type in-process gauge, which this machine does not have on it. So this will just sit there at 0 until you take it off. So it's kind of like a setup mode. All right, well, okay, so over here on the table we have your leveling pads. Takes 3, 1 in the back and 2 in the front. You have a grinding wheel hub. Inside this bag is a keyway that you're going to put in the spindle. You'll notice that the hub actually has a keyway in it. You want to have that. This is a dresser that mounts on the table. You can use it and you can swing it back out of the way. It's got a micrometer adjustment, so you know how much you took off when you dress. And this is a 2-point steady rest. Over here are 2 more quills. This is what you're going to need to make for the ID spindle in the back. The way this is held in is that this goes in the bore, and this has a thread in here. I believe it's a left-hand thread, and there's a rod, and on the end of the rod there's a nut. So the rod goes right through the spindle, and you tighten it up from the other side to pull this tight. You hold this with a wrench. There's one already in there, so you'll see how that goes. This is a splash guard that goes up here. That's it. That's the Kellenberger 600U. Thank you.